The world was supposed to end on December 31st, 1999. That's what they were told. So people sold their land, they handed over their money, they started cutting themselves off from their families and friends, because if the world was ending, none of that would matter anyway. Then January 1st came and nothing happened. And instead of admitting that they were wrong, the leaders of this group, they did something else. They picked a new date. That new date was March 17, 2000. That day, it ended with fire. Let's go back a little bit. It started in 1989 in Western Uganda with a woman named Credonia Mwerinde. She told people around her that the Virgin Mary was speaking through her. She claimed that Mary was giving direct instructions about sin, punishment, and the end of the world. Soon after, a man named Joseph Kibwetere, he joined her. He was a former Catholic teacher and a respected figure locally. And his presence there, right, it made the movement feel serious. It made it trustworthy. Over time, other senior figures became part of the inner circle too, including a Catholic priest named Dominic Katari Babu and other men like Joseph Kasapurari and John Kamagara. This was not one loud preacher shouting into the air. It was a small group of leaders that were reinforcing each other, giving the movement structure, giving it authority. And that's why people believed. They called themselves the Movement for the Restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. That was their name. On the surface, the message, it sounded like strict Christianity, 10 commandments, purity, obedience. But once you were inside, it became about control. Followers were told that the outside world was corrupt, it was dangerous. In fact, talking too much could make you sin, so silence was strongly encouraged. Some members, they were pushed to stop speaking completely. They were only using sign language. Sex was banned, even between married couples. Fasting was frequent. Prayer filled most of the day. They lived communally on cult land, they worked on farms, they wore similar clothing, and they were told to prepare constantly for what was coming. And then there was the money. Members were encouraged to sell everything that they owned and hand it over. So land, property, livestock, savings. If you believed that the world was ending, giving up earthly things, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like proof of faith. By the late 1990s, this wasn't a small group anymore. It had thousands of followers across Uganda, spread across different properties and camps. The group was even officially registered, which meant it wasn't operating completely underground, you get? Then came the prophecy everyone was waiting for. December 31st, 1999. Midnight passed. The world did not end. That's when things started to shift. Some followers started becoming worried. Some started asking questions. Some said they want their money back. And that was dangerous because this entire belief system, right, it depended on absolute obedience. Doubt threatened everything. So the leaders said that the prophecy was not wrong, that they just interpreted it wrong. They claimed that the message had been misunderstood. The real end date, they said, was now March 17, 2000. This time they insisted it would be final. In the days leading up to that date, followers were told to gather at the main compound in Kanungu. There, they did fasting, prayer, talk about purification. Then the night before, something strange happened. There was food, a lot of food. People ate like it was a celebration. They didn't know that it was like a goodbye. Then on the morning of March 17th, men, women, children, they entered the church building on the compound. And this part matters because once they were inside, the doors were closed and sealed from the outside. Then the building was set on fire. More than 300 people died in that church. Burned to death, trapped inside, they couldn't get out. At first, authorities described it as mass suicide. But that explanation, it did not last because as police kept searching, they didn't just find bodies in the church. They found bodies at other cult properties too, different places, different graves. In some locations, over 100 people were buried together. Many of the victims were children, and many of those bodies had not been burned. Doctors and investigators reported signs that some victims had been poisoned, some strangled, some beaten, which meant something deeply unsettling. A lot of the killing did not happen in that fire. The fire was not the beginning, it was the final act. By the time authorities stopped counting, the death toll had passed 700. Not every single member of the movement died. The group had so many followers spread across different locations. Some were not present that day, some had already left, some had been spared by chance. But after that massacre, many survivors just went silent. They were traumatized, they were ashamed, afraid to speak up, After the deaths, investigations were promised, arrest warrants were mentioned, but in the end, no one was ever successfully prosecuted. And this is where the story gets unsettling for me, because the leaders were never found. There were rumors that Credonia Mwerinde, she escaped Uganda. Some people claimed that she fled to another country. Congo was mentioned, Malawi was mentioned. None of those were ever confirmed, but she was never found. As for the other leaders, some were believed to have disappeared, others were rumored to have died, but officially there were no arrests, no trials, no clear answers. So to this day, no one can say for sure what really happened to the people who led this movement. They vanished, and the people who followed them, they paid the ultimate price. And by the way, these predictions, they happen a lot more than you think. Just last year in Ghana, the world was supposed to end again on December 25th. We're still here. Thank you so much for watching this video.